Welcome to Revolution Report, the show that highlights pressing issues, uplifts community voices, and questions the status quo. I'm Sarah Livings-Walsh.
And I'm Analisa Venolia.
We felt the need to dive deeper into societal problems and explore subjects from diverse perspectives. So join us in the revolution.
In this episode of Revolution Report, we'll be talking about various media theories and strategies and examining how the Trump team has used them to their advantage.
We'll also discuss how to combat the Trump administration's fascist media tactics and share some independent journalists who work to combat their misinformation.
This will be your guide to navigate the age of digital media. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn.
Let's get into it.
Before we get started, some of you might be wondering why you should listen to what we have to say about media theories and strategies.
Number one, media is our job.
Mm-hmm.
We take the work we do seriously and think critically about the messaging and our audience.
And number two, I have a master's degree in mass communication and graduated at the top of my class.
Absolutely.
Toot toot.
And I've been in media and the entertainment industry for the majority of my life. We know what we're talking about.
Sarah's an icon and put some respect on her name.
Oh.
Now, let's kick off our discussion of media theories and strategies with cultivation theory. Cultivation theory essentially asserts that long-term exposure to messages and viewpoints in the media affects the way people feel about the world around them. For example, continuous depictions of women as caregivers in media reinforces gender roles and expectations in the real world.
Now, how can we see cultivation theory in practice when looking at the Trump administration? Long-term exposure to Trump and his team have normalized their behavior and actions to many Americans. And I will admit, even to us.
Yeah, it's become par for the course.
Yeah. Trump and his team have pushed white Christian nationalist beliefs and agendas for so long that those ideas are now being treated as legitimate and have significant support among his base.
Trump's behavior and the beliefs he pushes aren't normal and shouldn't be treated like they are. And yet, we as a country have grown used to this kind of right-wing extremism in our politics over the course of years.
Moving on to another media theory. Agenda setting. The theory states that news media influences which issues and topics are important to the public through their coverage. For example, putting a story on the front page of a newspaper makes it seem important, whereas putting a story towards the final pages can make the topic seem not as serious.
And how has agenda setting had an impact on the Trump campaign? We could argue it's a huge part of the reason Trump made it into office in the first place. In the early days of the Trump campaign for the 2016 election, Donald Trump received outsized media coverage as a candidate.
Absolutely. He received truly insane amounts of coverage in comparison to other candidates, and what did this do? Made him seem like a legitimate candidate for the presidency. Simply by covering Trump as much as they did, mainstream media set the agenda for the public and made him seem important. He should have been a ridiculous candidate that never made it past the Republican primary, but here we are.
And boy, do we wish we weren't.
Yeah.
Next up in our discussion of media theories is priming. Priming is related to agenda setting. Priming, in regards to mass communications, is the idea that the political leaders or the media can influence which topics and values the public deem as important when judging something. It's similar to agenda setting, but the distinction is that priming specifically has to do with the criteria people use to judge something, not just what stories seem important overall to them.
Using Trump as an example, he and his team used priming during the 2024 election cycle. Trump constantly highlighted things like the stock market, job numbers, and the GDP growth to encourage Americans to evaluate his presidency through the lens of economic strength, rather than issues like ethics or foreign policy. His focus on the economy certainly isn't helping him now, but it did during the campaign. And I would also like to point out, especially focusing on foreign policy, that does not mean putting tariffs on every other country. That is not a solution. That doesn't help the country. That hurts the people within the country. Who pays for the tariffs?
Good point, Sarah. Another related media theory is framing. Framing is the way information is presented to an audience to influence how they feel about a particular subject, usually through specific word choices. For example, the terms pro-choice and pro-life both use framing to try and influence an audience to feel favorably about their stance through emphasizing either personal choices or life-saving through their rhetoric.
Trump and his team are practically, I would venture to say, experts at using framing to influence the way people feel about things. While his base is easily persuaded, sometimes others as well. In regards to immigration, Trump has constantly used words to paint an image of dangerous immigrants invading the United States, which, as we're sure you all know, isn't and hasn't happened. His emphasis on crime and the bad hombres, as well as those fake caravans he was always mentioning, created the sense that United States was facing a huge security threat in the form of undocumented immigrants. That framing in particular paved the way for the inhumane ICE actions we see today. And I would like to point out, the origin of ICE being formed was framing.
Oh, yeah.
With the Bush administration.
The whole counterterrorism, 9/11. That's how we got the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, so this has been a tactic that not just the Trump administration uses, but many politicians before him have used.
Oh, absolutely. It's part of the playbook. He's just using it at an unprecedented level to target human rights.
Absolutely. Like, again, we are living in unprecedented times, and a lot of people would argue with me on that, saying that, no, we've seen this before in history books. But I would argue back and I would rebuttal by saying we have not seen it so blatant before. We are in a digital age. Therefore, things are more accessible. Things can be seen on a global scale in the matter of mere seconds. We are not living in the same times that we were, so therefore it is unprecedented.
Absolutely. Now, we want to make it clear that just because the media and politicians are trying to influence the way you feel about certain issues, it doesn't mean that you as an audience member are just passively receiving what you're fed. The way you interpret the media you consume matters.
Yes, this concept is called reception theory. The person or people constructing a message encodes an intended meaning into the message, and the person receiving that message decodes their own meaning, intended or not.
There are 3 ways a receiver decodes a message: dominant, negotiated, and oppositional. Dominant interpretations go along with the intended meaning of the message. Negotiated interpretations see the intended meaning but modify it to suit their own perspective. And oppositional readings completely reject the intended meaning of a message.
Going back to that earlier example of Trump talking about immigration, a dominant interpretation would be just to accept his words as true and believe yourself that the U.S. was under attack from undocumented immigrants. An oppositional interpretation, which we're pretty sure our revolutionaries had, would be to reject the fear-mongering of Trump and see the racism in his words.
Yeah, we're a big fan of oppositional interpretations over here.
It's almost like we founded our brand on that.
What? Is this true?
Yes.
And we want to encourage our listeners to be critical of the news that you consume. Ask yourself what the intended message is behind a story. Who does it benefit? Are there larger narratives it plays into? Do you actually agree with the intended message, or do you have an oppositional interpretation? Be an active consumer of information, not a passive one. Asking yourself questions like this will make it easier to spot propaganda as well.
Absolutely. We know that consuming the news can be overwhelming, especially in recent years. And that's absolutely intentional by the Trump administration. They use a media strategy called the fire hose of falsehood to keep audiences entertained, confused, and overwhelmed. That is something we brought up in our earlier episodes, the fire hose of falsehood. We called this.
Oh, yeah.
The fire hose of falsehood is a propaganda method in which a large amount of messages are sent out rapidly, repeatedly, and continuously over multiple channels, like traditional media and social media.
And the term was coined in reference to Putin's media strategy. I wonder where Trump's team learned it from. It's not like he's buddies with Putin or something.
Oh, God, no.
Them? They don't know each other.
They're not in cahoots.
Mariah Carey about J-Lo.
They don't know each other. Yes, they do. Trump and his team continuously blast information at us without regard for the truth. And, as you've guessed it, that's the point. They want to create an audience that doesn't care about the truth or fact-checking so that propaganda messages are received easier.
Now, there are a couple ways to combat this fire hose of falsehood that we wanted to discuss. First, as we touched on before, you can be an active receiver of information and question the reasoning behind messages, generating oppositional interpretations of what's put out by Trump and his team.
Second, you could spend less time consuming news about Trump. We know it's always out there, and we know that you can feel like you're missing out on something or that you're uninformed. But with the fire hose of falsehood, the point is to keep you hooked and to keep you paying attention to what they want you to do instead of things like what they're trying to hide. In the digital age of information, think of your attention as currency. Don't spend it all on what Trump wants you to spend it on.
Facts. And we're not saying to stop consuming news or ignore everything he does. Just be intentional with what you consume. Not every social media post of Trump's needs to be discussed, and not every golf trip is worthy of coverage. Notice his administration's lies. Pay attention to the stories that they want to slip by you.
Trump and his team are very, as we would like to call it here, Wizard of Oz. The whole pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But we want our listeners to look for the man behind the curtain. Trump and the people funding him have agendas. Those agendas are what we need to be paying attention to.
And that's how we can fight against Trump's brand of fascism. Trump is a fascist who thrives on attention. He needs it. He needs to feel powerful and important. He's a fascist for the digital age. And like we said, attention is currency. If we give him less attention, make him less of a constant focus, we can push back against him and his fire hose of falsehood and drain his metaphorical bank account.
And drain, baby, drain. We're not saying that this is how to combat all forms of fascism. Fascism can manifest differently. As Anna and I are aware, we have both studied fascism. It's not all the same. But this is a way to resist Trump's particular kind of fascism because he thrives so much on attention and blasting us with information constantly. And paying attention to the people pulling the strings instead of him makes him less powerful of a fascist figurehead.
Facts. And speaking of fascism, we've seen the steady decline of mainstream media as it begins to bend the knee to Trump and censorship. Last year, The Washington Post, a paper that used to have the slogan, "Democracy dies in darkness," did not endorse a candidate for president, something they had done consistently since 1976. Now, who owns The Washington Post, may I ask?
Who?
Jeff Bezos.
Like I'm not shocked at all.
Jeff Bezos is spooky, actually.
Very spooky. Recently, The Washington Post fired columnist Karen Attiah for her social media post in the wake of the Charlie Kirk killing, where she quoted Kirk himself. Again, this is clear censorship, especially considering the columnists at the Post aren't required to follow the social media guidelines the paper has for its staff reporters.
MSNBC anchor Matthew Dowd was also fired after his comments on Kirk's death, and, most famously, ABC suspended Jimmy Kimmel's show for his comments on the person arrested for Kirk's killing. Variety magazine is encouraging public figures to apologize for what they say about Kirk. This is censorship. Our First Amendment rights are going down the drain.
Couldn't agree more. Trump recently tried to sue the New York Times for $15 billion for defamation. The case was immediately thrown out, but that's also an example of attempted censorship. This could have been a chilling effect on the media, making reporters afraid to criticize the president and his team in any way because they might get sued.
Even though Trump hates the New York Times, they too publish pieces that uphold fascism, support genocide, and rewrite legacies. So they're not free from bending the knee either.
How can we combat this rise in mass media censorship and bending of the knee to fascism? Consume more media by independent and local journalists. So many fantastic journalists have left mass media institutions and have created their own newsletters and publications. Independent journalists aren't going to have people like Bezos or companies like ABC dictating what they can and cannot say.
And to that end, we wanted to recommend some of our favorite independent journalists for anyone looking to expand the sources of news they consume.
Sarah Kendzior, who has been calling out the corruption of Trump and his cronies from the very beginning.
Taylor Lorenz. We discussed her a bit in our last episode on Dark Money. She covers technology and internet culture and has been on top of calling out censorship.
Ken Klippenstein, a journalist who left mainstream media to talk about the growing national security state in this country and published documents exposing government secrets.
T.
And
And we wanted to mention ProPublica.
yes,
An independent, nonprofit newsroom that has been consistently holding the Trump administration's feet to the fire.
we'll include links to all these people's newsletters and organizations on our website, handballcourtradio.com.
We know this was a lot of information, but here's the long and short of it all. Supporting independent journalists is helping fight fascism. And remember to think critically about the news you consume.
And last but certainly not least, be intentional with what you give your attention currency to.
That's about it for this episode. We hope it was informative.
As always, you can check out our website, handballcourtradio.com. You can also follow us on Blue Sky at Handball Court Radio. And you can also follow me there at Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm there as Not Like Mona Lisa. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss our content. And don't forget to rate, review, and follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
And with that, I'm Sarah Livings-Walsh,
I'm Analisa Venolia.
and this has been Revolution Report.